Hey guys, it's me again. So this is going to be a very different video. First, I'm going to have to introduce myself. I go by the Tower Commander on YouTube now. And while I'm still just a small time YouTuber, I do have my own opinions that I want to voice. So it's not like there's going to be a huge lot of you who are going to watch this video. Hell, I might get 0 views on this video, but well, there's a few things I need to get off my chest. First of all, just to introduce myself a little bit, kind of explain who I am. I'm a United States Marine Reservist. So, there are a few things that I have to talk about since I talk about politics online. One, the standard disclaimer. None of my opinions are endorsed by the DoD, the Department of the Navy, or the Marine Corps, nor are my anecdotes on the opinions, the political opinions of other Marines indicative of the military as a whole. And this is a very nerve-wracking video for me. But it's something that I think I should have my piece on. Because as a reservist, sort of like Tulsi Gabbard, I'm still allowed to have my opinions out in the civilian world. And I made no qualms about who I support for the upcoming election. But this is also a very, dangerous time right now. So some people who actually do watch me might wonder why I didn't make a video immediately on the assassination attempt of Donald Trump. And well, there were certain things that I could have said that could still impact my career. And there are things that, I'm not allowed to say, even though I'm a civilian, doing my civilian job, and just having my own civilian opinions. But I want to make something clear. I still have my own opinions. As a United States citizen, I'm still allowed to vote. I still have that privilege. And there's certain criteria I take into account when I'm voting. And I guess I shouldn't beat around the bush too much. What's going on in the country right now is frightening. And I can't really alleviate any of those fears. Because after the assassination attempt, which we kind of saw coming a little bit, we were so close to absolute disaster. And I'm not talking about the Republican Party. I'm not talking about conservatives. I'm not talking about people who are anti-Biden or what have you. I'm talking about as a nation. We were at a turning point right then and there. And for the POS, who almost put us into that situation, and excuse me for saying this, but I will not apologize, I hope he is burning in hell. In all honesty. I have no pity for him. I don't even care what his motives were. What he did put all of us at huge, huge risk. So I held off making this video specifically because there were certain things I could say that could affect me, and I'm not big enough that the things I said could affect the country, but could reflect poorly on the Marine Corps as a whole. Now again, none of my opinions are reflective at all of the thinking inside the military or the government as a whole. They're all mine and mine alone. I was having dreams about the assassination attempt last night. And if you're wondering, if I'm overreacting, I have to explain what actually happened there. Because while the memes are funny, the pictures, the joking around, 2 people are dead. One was the shooter, which is unexpected. The Secret Service does not screw around with that kind of stuff. They weren't going to try to chase him down and take him in alive to question him. They had the shot, and they took the shot. And then a fire chief was killed in front of his wife and kid. And according to the daughter, the man protected both her and his wife from the bullets when he got hit. We were about 2 inches from disaster. If the shooter was just 2 inches to his right, we would have seen a former president, current head nominee, current presumptive nominee for one of the major parties in the country, have his head blown off on live television. After everything they've done to Trump, they've lied, they smeared him, they tried to cancel him, they tried to ruin his reputation, they tried to sue him into oblivion, they have arrested him, they put on show trials, more or less. They've done everything they can to destroy this man. And they've been calling him the new mustache man. Thanks, YouTube, for having to censor myself. But I would have to censor myself anyways. Look, Trump is not that bad. He's not like a libertarian or anything, but during like the pandemic, he allowed each and every state the right to lock down or to open up, to control their own commerce to the best of his ability. He allowed them as much freedom as possible. And a lot of people will criticize him for that. But if he was the kind of authoritarian that they claimed he would be, that he could be, he would have forced them to either open up or all shut down. He would have forced everybody to do exactly what he wanted and not allowed any dissent whatsoever. Instead, in my opinion, he allowed the Democrats to hurt their own states, put COVID patients in nursing homes, killing senior citizens, and destroy America's economy, all in an effort, a misguided effort, to lessen the impact, but also to hurt Donald Trump, in my opinion. Again, all my opinion, but he didn't do what they claimed he would do. And then after January 6th, which I predicted, by the way, I predicted that it was like in a YouTube comment. It would be so hard for me to dig it up. It's not really important, but I basically said what would actually happen if a million strong crowd of people just said screw it and marched on the Capitol and just didn't stop for the police. And my line of thinking at the time was that scene from V for Vendetta, where all those British citizens in the movie put on the mask, put on a cape, and they just march up to Parliament, and they just walk right by the police, stepping over the barricades, and just basically dare the police to open fire. And the police just can't do anything. And they are live at the Parliament to watch it burning down. I didn't want any of that to happen. I want to make that clear. I didn't want something like January 6th to happen. But I said, what could stop it if it was? And we've been paying for the consequences. And again, my opinion, of Nancy Pelosi's incompetence and negligence. Not Donald Trump. And they've been using that as a cudgel ever since. I've been looking at the diagrams, and theories. I'm not going to put any conspiracy theories out there. I will tackle one in this video, but the way they were showing it, Trump was looking like this when he was talking, and then he kind of moved like that. So people have been putting diagrams on showing that the bullet probably would have hit here, exit through the back, and probably hit his brain. Instead, when he moved like this, the bullet coming straight on hit the ear instead. And we are unbelievably lucky, both as a nation and as conservatives, but especially as a nation, that the shooter missed. And again, those misses killed somebody and injured 2 others, 1 critically. We are talking about a situation where one of 2 things would have happened. 1, the right, who have seen the Democrats and liberals, progressives as a whole, go after Donald Trump. And it's not every liberal, it's not every progressive, but the establishment, if people want to call it the deep state, sure, whatever, go after this man for almost 8 years straight now. There would be no convincing that crowd that this negligence by the U.S. Secret Service wasn't some kind of conspiracy. And even if it wasn't, there would be 1 or 2 things that happened. Full-on riots, protests that turn into riots, and maybe even a civil war. Or the right would mourn, the Democrats and progressives would say their half-hearted condolences, maybe a few heartfelt condolences here or there, and the right would have done nothing. And honestly, I don't know what the scariest of those 2 options was. But here we are, and it didn't happen. And now people are joking around, saying that Donald Trump's going to win, and it's inevitable at this point, especially with what's going on with Joe Biden and his various gaffes and brain farts. And the answer is probably yes. Donald Trump will probably win now, if people hold on to these feelings and come to a logical conclusion and actually get out and vote. Vote more, a higher percentage of people voting and allowing the process to actually work. And I highly encourage anyone who watches this video that you go out and vote. I don't care if it's for Donald Trump. I don't care if it's for Biden. I don't care if it's for Jill Stein or any of the other third-party candidates, Chase Oliver, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I don't care. We need to go out and vote. And I know the majority of you are going to probably vote for Donald Trump, or at least against Joe Biden. Voting is a privilege, not a right, and everyone should exercise it now more than ever, especially if you truly believe that Donald Trump is the new Satan, or if you think that Donald Trump is the new savior of the world. It doesn't matter. The political violence has gone out of hand. The fact that someone has actually tried and almost succeeded in killing a former president who is the current nominee of a major line party. And there have been assassinations since the attempt on Reagan in the 80s. Hell, this is not even the first assassination attempt against Trump, but it's the closest one we've ever seen. There was at least one guy who tried to rush the stage with a pistol at one point at a Trump rally. There was a guy who threw a live grenade on stage with George W. Bush, apparently forgetting to pull the pin. And there have always been attempts on even Democrat presidents, too. It happens. But very rarely do we see a president actually get hit by a deadly projectile or get into a situation like this. One of the conspiracy theories that I want to tackle is the idea that this is all staged. One, it's a ridiculous concept. But like the general idea of it that the conservatives mock is that the shooter was instructed to shoot Donald Trump's ear, which is ludicrous, especially given how much Donald Trump was actually moving around. That would indicate to me alone that Donald Trump wasn't in on it. Two, the difference between an earshot and an actual headshot? Well, let's just say a world of difference. There was a video I watched, this was probably like a 22, but there was a video I watched with some famous gun tubers who shot a ballistic dummy with a 50 cal. And the first shot, they tried to shoot the target's ear, and they basically just hit the ear here and like pierced right through it, and the dude's head was fine. Based on the fact that the bullet goes supersonic, the sound alone would probably burst your eardrum or at least hurt like hell, probably causing permanent hearing damage. And the concussion probably wouldn't be very nice for your brain, but you would survive. You probably wouldn't get brain damage from it. And then they shot like the ballistic dummy like barely in the cheek and basically caused the whole head to just explode. Now a 22 wouldn't do that, but even if it was 2 inches to the right, it might not have actually killed the president. But I guess the general idea of how you would stage it would be that when Donald Trump hit the ground, when he reached up for his ear, he would, take some kind of fake blood, smear it on, or even real blood. The Secret Service is always carrying around pints of the president's blood that he's donated to himself in the emergency that he was seriously wounded, and they could just provide him the blood packets. So maybe he had like a small packet of blood in his pocket and he smears it on, and then when he hits the ground, the Secret Service comes in and they kind of like rub it on. We know that didn't happen because we have pictures of Donald Trump on the ground. There were people who could see him who were at the actual event, and they could see him underneath the Secret Service and take pictures of him. We know for a fact that Donald Trump was actually hit. This was not a staged event. This frickin' happened. Anyone who says otherwise is coping. Secondly, for the people who are commenting on this assassination attempt, there have been a lot of completely and utterly disgusting comments. The mainstream media is basically victim blaming Trump, saying that his rhetoric led to this, that his rhetoric invited political violence that eventually culminated in an assassination attempt. A lot of them are completely and utterly ignoring that they basically have been calling Trump the new mustache man and Satan, and that he would destroy democracy, and that he would never leave the presidential office, that he would somehow become a king, And as fun as it is to joke about making Trump king, about making a dynasty of Trumps to rule this country, it's a joke. And the hyperbolic nature of the mainstream media have pushed extremists further and further off the deep end. And the media is culpable, at least partly the blame, for the violence that erupted. And on one mainstream news outlet, one of the commentators made an excellent point. If you're going to victim blame Trump and say that this political violence is his fault, which one of the candidates was shot? Because if Trump was causing political violence, if he was encouraging it, which he's not, which he wasn't, he's always said, protest peacefully, vote at the polls, fight, fight, fight in regards to a peaceful transference of power through exercising your privilege, not your right, your privilege to vote. And he's questioned elections just like the Democrats have. Just like Hillary Clinton questioned hers, just like Al Gore questioned his, just like Stacey Abrams questioned hers, just how Democrats tried to convince then Vice President Biden to reject the 2020 election results. That happened. False electors, you can say whatever you want about that. Alternate electors have been used for literal centuries inside the United States. And we're not that old a country. People have sent their alternate electors to Congress and have allowed Congress to determine which set of electors is legitimate. Trump is not the first. He wasn't trying to make a coup. This is standard for the United States. It doesn't happen often, but it happens probably as often as someone tries to assassinate and manages to hit a United States president. I want to make that clear, because people don't seem to understand that when they were calling for the Republican electors in commercials, the Democrats were making commercials aimed at the Republican electors, asking them to reject Donald Trump and vote, quote unquote, their conscience, which backfired. Some electors, like 2 or 3, voted against Trump against the party's will, while more electors, like 6 or 7, whatever it was, they're called faithless electors, voted against Hillary Clinton against their party's desires. Hillary Clinton was just that unpopular. We are not a nation that should be using Banana Republic court cases. We should not be using lawfare. We should not be using bullets to decide who our president is. There's going to be conspiracy theories. There's going to be finger pointing. There's going to be a lot of people to blame for the failings that happened on that day Donald Trump was shot. There's going to be an entire shift in political discourse. And again, I'm going to call out guys like Destiny, who are actively trying to stir the pot, who are celebrating that a United States fire chief was killed. Because according to Destiny, that dude is a fascist supporter. And it reminds me of the woke show called The Boys. And if a lot of you guys don't know that show, it's about a superhero based on a comic book, a superhero who has a god complex and eventually decides to try to take over the United States. And there was some political commentary in the original comic, but it's very clear that the showrunners for The Boys, again based on the comic book Homelander, that the showrunners for the show are very left-leaning, and while they try to make fun of the right and the left, they get it better when they try to make fun of the left because they understand the left, but it's clear that they don't understand the right. And there's going to be people who compare a scene in The Boys where Homelander decides to kill some of his supporters in order to make them martyrs, to make himself more popular. And that fire chief being killed is going to be compared to that martyr, like a sacrifice to the Republicans. This is what some progressives are going to say. And it's absolutely disgusting. This man didn't need to die. None of this was necessary. Destiny is making fun of the fact that there's going to be one less Pennsylvania voter for Trump now. And again, he's saying some of this stuff deliberately to just piss people off, for the clicks and the views, and to remain relevant. But some of the stuff he's saying is stuff how he actually feels. And I'm also going to call out people like Short Fat Otaku, also known as Dev, Hassan Piker, and his uncle, Cenk Uygur. The kind of stuff that the media is saying, and these individuals are saying, is disgusting. I'm not going to go over everything they've said. Dev especially gets my goat, because I have a whole thing on him specifically, but my basic opinion is, to make it short and sweet, is that Dev has listened to the philosophers. He has tried to learn from them and tried to apply their teachings. But one thing you gotta remember about the philosophers, say like Plato, if you're quoting Plato, you have to remember that this guy was huge. He was a bodybuilder. The guy was a wrestler. He fought. He exercised. He worked out. A lot of the stuff that he philosophized about, he learned from experience. He learned from working, from practical experiences. And it's so easy to take a philosopher's lessons and to see it in the I want to say transitory, but that's not really the word I'm looking for. In the opaque, to see it as a philosophy, the intangible. Like, to see it as a purely mental type of experience, I suppose. Whereas the philosophers, to truly understand them, you have to get down in the dirt and actually work. You have to take care of not just your mental health and your knowledge and expand your horizons. You also have to work on your body, your spirit, your soul. There are 6 to 11 types of health: emotional, spiritual, soul, will, your occupational health, your recreational health, your social health, your emotional health, your financial health. Dev only applies the mental and the knowledge-based aspects of the philosophers, to the point where he sees Joe Biden as the lesser of two evils. And I hesitate to even say that either Trump or Biden are evil. And especially not Trump. When you come to a false conclusion about somebody, like Dev has, it completely warps your sense of reality. And that's what we have here. We have people, mostly on the left, but someone on the right, who are just so wrapped up in their own party politics that they don't see the gray anymore. Or even if they do see gray, they see it as their side is gray and the other side is just pure evil. That is not the case. And while I have heavy criticisms for the left, progressives, Democrats, Green Party, what have you, not all of them are just out and out evil with a hard E. There are people who really think that they're doing the best for the country. And in some cases, they have points. Again, we are not a country that should solve things with violence, with bullets. We solve it with debates and voting. Legal voting. Allowing American citizens who have earned the privilege to vote. My time in the military has shifted my perspective to the right. And there's a reason why those who join the military are usually right-leaning. Not always. There are officers and other people who are enlisted, like Tulsi Gabbard, I believe, was an enlisted woman first before she became an officer. I'm not sure if she's actually an officer. You can correct me on that, but there are people who lean to the left, and once they leave the military, they join politics, become a congressman for the Democrats, what have you. But there's a reason why a lot of people who join the military are already right-leaning or become right-leaning while they're in the military. Because they get down in the dirt, work with the practical, they get the ego beat out of them. Not literally, at least not. That's not how it's supposed to happen. They're supposed to learn discipline. And when they mess up, they are punished and made to learn. They start to apply the practicalities, the practical. And they start to realize that not everything is abstract. And that there is hard consequences for screwing up. Not saying that all Democrats aren't practical, but I'm saying that right now, in the current political climate, conservatives tend to be more practical. And I have many criticisms of what you would call neocons and rhinos. I have criticisms of neoliberals, progressives. I have criticism for those who consider themselves MAGA. I consider myself MAGA. I consider myself center-right. Not everyone who's MAGA is to the right, and especially not the far right. Because whenever the media talks about the far right, they're talking about fascist adjacent. And as I mentioned in my previous video, fascism is a left-wing ideology just like communism is, while right-wing is more about the divine right to rule, kingship, emperors, people who believe that they are given a mandate from higher orders. It is a religious kind of order, whereas the left is more secular. There are overlaps. It's not black and white. Politics is not two-dimensional. I see politics as a three-dimensional thing. And I made a short on that too, where there's the conservative and the progressive. There's the libertarian and the authoritative. There's the left and right, political, religious, secular, libertarian, authoritative, authoritarian than there is other aspects. It's more like forward, back, left, right, up, down. I wish I could think of it right now, but my brain's just completely and utterly scrambled from everything that's been going on. We are at a precipice. We're at the edge of the cliff. And it's one small step away from becoming a major disaster. And while I can't say that the tensions should cool, people should be upset, people should ask questions, people should still push, and people should get out there and vote. We have to be aware of where our actions could take us if we are not careful, and how we should act, and how we should act. When you get out there, when you encourage people to vote, if you ballot harvest where it's legal, if you are working for a campaign, or just speaking to your relatives and friends, or even strangers, about politics to try to convince them to your way of thinking, avoid violence. If someone is convincing you, trying to convince you to commit violence, report them. They may be a Fed. You may be reporting them to an organization that's quote unquote in on it. You may think that. But do not, under any circumstances, listen to what they have to say. Or if you do, try to convince them otherwise, because they may not actually be some kind of person who is acting in bad faith. They may be someone who's misguided. Don't say anything, because that could be used against you in the courtroom. Because I'm pretty sure that's what Destiny is saying, for example, is outright felonious. Because he's basically encouraging further assassination attempts. There is free speech. You get free speech from the First Amendment. You get your guns from your Second Amendment. But you cannot encourage violence. You cannot praise violence. I have a distinct feeling that guys like Destiny are about to get a knock on the door from the United States Secret Service. Maybe not the FBI, maybe not the DHS, or the CIA or anything like that, but the Secret Service, who, by the way, royally screwed the pooch. You can listen to Dan Bongino about that, who's also trying very desperately to not say something that he's going to regret. A lot of people are about to get in a lot of trouble, especially if Donald Trump wins, because once the agencies are now working for a conservative again, a lot of people in the government are going to take another hard look at leftists that encourage violence. And I'm not saying that as a threat. I'm not saying that's any kind of corruption or anything, because these people in some cases actually do need to be investigated. Kathy Griffin, when she held up that fake severed head of Donald Trump, her life was ruined. Not only politically, socially, but that can be seen as encouraging violence against the President of the United States. And the U.S. Secret Service had to act, and they had to investigate her. It wasn't like she was a direct threat to the president. But there are a lot of crazy people out there, and encouraging crazy people to go after the president leads to people like that fire chief. And I wish I had looked up his name before I did this. I feel terrible about that. I pray for that man and his family. It leads to people like that fire chief being killed. None of this was necessary. None of it. And before I start rambling, I'm going to call it here at 40 minutes. Guys, be safe out there. That's all I ask. Watch yourselves. And do not act in violence. It's a very dangerous situation right now. And you might not see it that way. And a lot of you, you know, you're street smart. You're smart. You're logical. You're not, you know for a fact that you're not going to be any place dangerous. You're not going to say anything stupid. You're going to post your memes and make your jokes, what have you. And you know you're going to be fine no matter what. But you never know when someone else out there in the world is going to do something so stupid, so dangerous, that they put all of us in danger. So again, be safe, be smart, go vote. Go vote. Okay. That's all I gotta say. Bye, guys.